And welcome to the Ascend Television Network, and welcome to Second Chances. My name is Greg Hennis, and this is a wonderful program that I just really look forward to as we get to meet people from all walks of life, all throughout the country, great country of ours. And actually, we've even had some guests that have come to us from all different corners of the world. But the unique thing is about all of our guests, actually, is no matter where they are, what their situation is, they all have that common bond where they've decided to make Jesus the Lord of their life. And we have a wonderful guest with us today. His name is Jeffrey Moore. He is the author of the book entitled We Believed. And boy, when you hear that title, Jeffrey, that just says a lot of things to a lot of different topics. But in particular, I think our topic today is really going to focus on adoption. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So one of the things I like to do, Jeffrey, before we really get into the book entitled We Believed, I love to learn about our guests. So I'd like to give you just a minute or two here to kind of talk to us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, were you born into a Christian home, things like that, so we kind of get to know you a little bit.
Of course, Greg. Thanks so much for having me on the show. I'm really excited about today. I grew up in a small town in Northeast Texas. I was born into a Christian home, went to a Baptist church, very conservative when I grew up. So I came to faith in Jesus when I was about 8 or 9 at a revival meeting with Rick Stanley, who was Elvis' stepbrother at our church. And I just visited that church just recently when I was in town visiting my parents, who still live in that area. I went to Baylor University where I met my lovely wife, Christine, and we got married after college. We dated all through college and got married afterwards. I spent 20 years as a petroleum geologist, have a degree in geology from Baylor. And that's where I first began to describe myself as a treasure hunter and being able to find things, look in the earth and find things of value and bring those up for the benefit of everyone. And so that was my early career. Overlapped on top of that has been this call to adoption, which we'll talk more about today, that began in 2007. And God began to call us into that area of life. We had one son at the time, and we kind of moved into the adoption area from there. But so I have done different types of ministry during my life. I've traveled internationally a little bit and had the chance to minister in various capacities, volunteering at orphanages, doing a little bit of speaking in churches a couple of times. I've certainly spoken in my home churches many times here in the U.S. And God has really given me a heart in this season of life to be able to encourage others. And even beyond, adoption is our story, of course, but even beyond that, I believe that everyone has promises from God in their life that need to be activated. Maybe they haven't fully connected with those promises for them. And I want to encourage others and use our experience to encourage others to get closer to God, to hear his voice, and to partner with him in those big things in life.
So you mentioned something just a moment ago that kind of caught my attention because it'll kind of answer a lot of questions that a lot of people may actually be thinking. So you mentioned when you started the process in 2007, you had a child. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, we have one son.
A biological child?
Yes, he was 3 at the time.
Okay, so a lot of people will probably say, well, gee, I only thought that you could really adopt children if you couldn't have children. That's not the case, though, is it?
No, that is not the case at all. Certainly, there are different rules and regulations here in the U.S. and also with other countries. Every country has a little bit of its own regulations in terms of what your family looks like already and ages and things like that. But you can certainly adopt children, even if you already have biological children. And we know several people that have done that, both domestically in the U.S. and also internationally.
All right. So anybody that's tuned into the beginning of this program and thought that the book was called We Believe because you didn't have any children, and going into the process, that's not why you entitled it We Believed. Let's cut right to the chase on that. Why did you entitle this book We Believed? I mean, now think about this, ladies and gentlemen. Jeffrey and his wife already had a child, so it wasn't because they didn't have a child that they believed. What was the title all about?
I'll tell you, Greg, because I'm very excited about the title and about our story. So we, to get to the end of the story, we actually adopted 4 children, 4 siblings from Peru in 2007. So we went from a family with 1 child to a family of 5 children overnight. And It was a journey of faith of 10 years. It started in early 2007, May of 2007, and it was in late May and June of 2017 that we actually traveled to Peru for a month and completed the adoption there. So it was 10 years
Wow.
in this journey from when God first told us about adoption and began to let us know he wanted to partner with us and to have us partner with him in that regard until we actually completed. And so there were many, many times along the way that we had to exercise our faith and continue to believe, because there were certainly times where we wondered if we were hearing correctly. We wondered if we were on the right path, as everyone does when they have something that God is speaking to them, but they don't know all the ins and outs yet. I like to describe our process as putting together a puzzle without the picture. And so we would get a puzzle piece. God would give us a dream or a word from someone or something that we just felt in our spirit as we'd spend time with him that was the next step. And we'd get that piece of the puzzle and we'd put it onto the table. And then we'd get another piece and we'd put that on the table. But they might go together, they might not. But at the early days, we didn't know what the big picture was going to look like. So there are things like at the beginning, we thought it might just be one child that we were adopting. And then we moved on to thinking about multiple children. God led us into that, but we didn't know if it was multiple adoptions from different places or if it was all in one time. And so we had to take all these puzzle pieces and just begin to put them together. And over time, God began to reveal, what the picture was going to look like. But it took a lot of faith. It took a lot of patience in that process to really believe the words of God that he was telling us, and believe that he was faithful, that he was true, that the things that he said to us were going to happen. We just had to keep listening, keep obeying him, following him, partnering with him, and putting those puzzle pieces together.
So 2007 is when you started this journey, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so Jeffrey, you and your wife probably had an idea of the road that you wanted to travel in 2007, and I suspect
we did.
And I don't know. I'm just asking. I suspect that road was, we would like to adopt a child. Was that the road you were going down?
At the very beginning, yes. When we had one child already, he was 3, our oldest son Joshua, and we were thinking about expanding our family. We were feeling God was leading us to do that biologically at the time. And then we got this call to adoption. And yes, exactly. At first, we thought, oh, this is great. We're going to add a child to our home, through adoption. That'll be great. We'll have two kids from then. But then over time, God began to really tell us, okay, no, it's not just one. I am calling you to adopt a bunch of kids. And the process kind of went from there. I had a vision in 2007 that I'd love to share with you.
Sure, I'd love to hear.
Really started this whole process. And in this vision, I knew it was a vision because I was awake. It wasn't a dream. I was definitely awake, but I was seeing things and experiencing things that weren't in my living room. So in this vision, and I describe it fully in the book, but the short version is I was floating in the ocean at night. It was very calm, but it was dark. But I was being carried by like a current in the water somewhere. And I came up on this tropical island. I walked up on the beach. It was all quiet. It was deserted. There were palm trees there. And the most interesting thing was lying around in the sand on the beach of this island were these beautiful gemstones. Now, these weren't like in an engagement ring. These were like the size of a golf ball or bigger.
Wow.
I mean, they were enormous. And they were all different colors, and they were glowing with like an internal fire. So in the dark, you could just see all these points of beautiful light shining around in the darkness on this beach. And I just wanted to I felt compelled to reach down and start picking them up. And as soon as I did, the Lord spoke to me and said something so profound. I still remember it. He said, "My son, are you willing to be carried by my spirit to a land far away to pick up the jewels that no one else even knows about?"
Whoa.
And in that moment, it was like he pulled back the curtain of heaven just a little bit. He flipped over the puzzle box with the picture on it, and I could see, and I knew that the jewels represented children, and that he was calling us to go to another country, another culture, and adopt children and bring them into our home that maybe the world didn't know about. Maybe they were, kind of lost to say. And at that moment, that's what I knew. I just knew that in my spirit. And that was the genesis of the story. And from there, it just continued.
Wow. So when you began the process, were you, thinking Peru? Were you thinking adopting for the United States? What were your thoughts? What were your expectations? And kind of talk to us about that.
Absolutely. So with that vision, I kind of had a good sense that it was international. It was another country. Certainly, there are many children to be adopted in the United States, and there are many people that feel called to do that, and I applaud them. I applaud anyone for following God's plan, for their life. We felt a different calling. We felt that we were supposed to go to another country. Now, at the same time I got this vision, God gave us a specific instruction. He told us to go to a country in West Africa called Burkina Faso, where we had some missionary connections already, to go that fall and go there as a family mission trip. And so I began to, put those puzzle pieces together, the call to adoption and this call to go to another country, Burkina Faso, and said, hey, I guess God's calling us to adopt from there. So we began to prepare for that. We began to tell friends and family, we're going to Burkina Faso to adopt. Now, keep in mind, we were just starting the process. We weren't even approved. We didn't even know what the process was for getting approved for international adoption at that time. So we were very truthfully ignorant of what the process would be like. But we knew God had told us this. And so we went to the country. We stayed in an orphanage with a missionary that we knew. We volunteered there. We got out into the community. We brought food to widows. We had chances to pray for people and minister there. But we never connected with an orphan that we felt like God was calling us to adopt. And so we came back from that trip actually very discouraged, feeling like we had missed it. We had put the pieces together incorrectly, and we thought, we don't even know if this is what we're supposed to do anymore. So it took some time to come back to the Lord and just began to renew that call and go back to the words that he had spoken to us. I've always been a journaler, so I write things down when God tells me. And that's been huge in this journey, because without that, I wouldn't have been able to go back and reread all those things that God had said and put them together in a different way sometimes when I needed to. So that was the early days. And then 2012, we actually went to India. We were getting approved in the process at that time. We thought maybe God was calling us to adopt from India. So we made a trip there. And similar thing happened. It was a great trip. But we came back and did not feel any connection to adopt from there, though our hearts were certainly, with the people and with what God was doing in India. But we came back, and that was when we decided to pick Peru. And so we selected Peru as our country of choice to adopt. And literally 2 days later, India put their international adoption program on hold indefinitely.
Ooh, wow.
Now, it's reopened since then, but they were restructuring things significantly. It took, I think, some years to do that. And so that was just one of those confirmations, those puzzle pieces along the way, that we made the choice and then felt immediately God confirmed, yes, you've made the right choice, and we're going all in for Peru.
How in the world did you keep such a positive attitude on moving forward? I mean, let's face it, there's lessons in life that can come from what you're saying, and it can't even be about adoption. But how many times have we all been to what we thought was the place where something was going to happen, to get there to find out it wasn't, and then to go to something else like you did, the second country, India, and find out that wasn't it? How in the world did you continue to keep pushing forward, you and your wife, Jeffrey?
That's a great question, and people ask us that quite frequently. The honest truth is there were moments, there were seasons of weeks, months at a time that we didn't know. We honestly didn't know what we were doing. And we wondered, have we heard correctly, really truthfully, and is this adoption really going to happen down the road? And we just had to come back to the faithfulness of God. That's one of the things that I just really learned in this process, that God is completely faithful. His words are completely true. And when we can really listen to him and hear clearly what he's saying, everything he said in this process came true. But we did have to walk in faith. And I think that's part of the calling of faith, in a Christian's life, is that we don't see everything. We don't see clearly. the Bible talks about, we see in part, we prophesy in part, we know in part. We have to work together in the community of believers within our friends and our family and our church to stay in faith and to stay connected to the purposes of God in our life. And we have many, many people that came around us at different strategic times that would pray with us, would encourage us, would even remind us of the things that God had said to us in our journey. And that part really was really crucial and critical to us, staying on the journey, staying on the path, and being faithful to what God said.
There is a line that you use in your book, Jeffrey, the book entitled, of course, We Believed, and the line is this: every adoption story is different, a great freedom to participate with God in the process.
Yes.
Obviously, your journey is going to be much different than maybe a guy that is in the same town as you. Their journey is going to be different. Right. What is it about the adoption process that kind of leads people down different roads? Is there something that happens during that process that kind of forces this family to go in this direction? Obviously in your case it was the Lord, but why certain families gravitate to Peru? Why do certain families gravitate to China? What is it about those things?
Right. Well, from my perspective, as a believer, I believe that it's part of God's partnership with us that no one has the same calling. I mean, we may have similar gifts. We may have similar callings in the general sense, like to adoption or to be married or to have children or to have a business or to have a ministry. There are general callings like that that are very similar for lots of people. But the specifics to everyone's life and calling is specific to them. And God has certain things based on who he has created me to be, who he's created you to be, that he is calling us to in life. And, I think that's part of the process and why it took us 10 years, because God had to build some things into our character, into our lives, so that when we actually completed the adoption, that we would be the people that we needed to be so that we could be a father and a mother and a brother to the children that God was calling into our family that they needed. And the results of that have been absolutely outstanding. I mean, our 4 adopted children are doing phenomenal. People that look at our family that don't know our story can't believe that they were adopted just 18 months ago into our family. They didn't speak English at that time. They had been to school in Peru, but not to American schools. And there's just so many things that have been so exciting to see our kids develop, over time, that we're just so thankful that God, what he has done in their lives and the way that he has developed us in our lives so that we could partner with them to bring these kids into our home and to see them achieve their purpose in life.
Now, there's something that I learned here, which is pretty fascinating to me. To listen to you talk, you're very excited what the Lord has done for you. As anyone who's been through what you and your family have been through to get these 4 wonderful kids, and you even wrote a journal. So the last question I would expect to be asking you is, why in the world, Jeffrey, were you hesitant to write this book?
I was hesitant to write the book because in some ways I didn't really see the uniqueness of our story. I felt like that all we had really done is just try to follow God step by step, moment by moment, day by day, as best we knew how. And this is where it led us. But I didn't feel like that was terribly unique. I feel like that's the calling everyone has in their lives, to just walk moment by moment with Jesus and follow the path that he has for them. But as I began to we came home and I began to talk to people, look back on the whole process, the whole 10 years, and talk to friends and a good neighbor, a friend of mine. They just began to say, you know what? You need to share this story, because it's not just about adoption, but there are truths that you've learned. There are things you've learned about God and about how he works and how he speaks to us in our lives that other people need to hear. And so from there, I just began to pray about it. And I sat down, it's kind of an inspiration, and I wrote out the first part of the first chapter and how it was going to start. And once I had that, I felt like, okay, I've got how the book's going to start. and I feel like I can keep going from there. And so from there, I told the story, shared the things that God taught me in the process and taught our family. And the book I've been very pleased with how well it's been received.
If someone would like to get a copy of the book, it's by Jeffrey S. Moore. It's entitled We Believed. Jeffrey, tell us how one could obtain a copy of your book.
Well, the easiest way is go to Amazon.com. You can get it in paperback, or you can get it in ebook for Kindle. You can also go to my website, webelievedbook.com. And it's available in other places as well. It's available for Apple. It's available at barnesandnoble.com and some other places.
So the 10-year process, we often read in the Bible that it took the Egyptians 40 years, and I think to myself every time I go through the Bible and I read that, I'm thinking, how in the world did Moses keep the faith for all those years to get the children to the promised land? So how in the world did you keep going, 10 years? I mean, a lot of people would say, well, obviously, if it doesn't happen in 2 years, we've missed the mark. You and your wife, I'm sure, looked at each other some days and probably said, honey, do you think we missed the mark? So what was it about this calling? I know you had confirmations from the Lord, but what kept you going?
That's a hard question to answer. It's a good question. I think it just is how God spoke to my heart and spoke to my spirit in the process. There were times that, like I said, I would forget. We'd be years into the process, and I would.
Because I'm sure some of your friends might have even said, these people are crazy. They go to these countries, nothing happens, and they're still trying to adopt. What's the matter with them?
Oh, yes. We've been called crazy several times. And part of the approval process is we had to have visits with a licensed psychologist and get a report. And so I'm pleased to say that I have a report from a licensed psychologist stating that we're not crazy. So I'm going to frame that and put it on the wall because we certainly were called crazy many times. And I'm sure there are people that thought we were crazy that didn't actually say that at the time. But, it became a driving thing in our lives. It became all-consuming in some ways at some points because we just felt so sincerely and so deeply that adoption was what God had called us to. And, he was so faithful in the process that there'd be moments where we would think, I don't know if this is going to happen. Nothing seems to be happening in the natural, but yet we knew there were things happening behind the scenes that God was doing. And in those moments when we would just return to the Lord and just get on our knees in prayer and say, God, you've got to show us something. You've got to show us. Are we still on the right track? Is this what we're supposed to do? And he would be faithful to say, yes, this is it. He would give us another confirmation, another sign. Something would come along in the process. Someone would speak over us. Something would happen. We'd see some movement. And it really was a partnership.
Were these 4 children siblings that you adopted?
Yes, they are siblings. That is correct.
So it was probably pretty awesome that they were able to stay together, which was a wonderful thing, and add to your family. Different age groups, Jeffrey?
Yes, the kids right now are 4, 5, 8, and 10, and our oldest son is 14.
Wow. Boys and girls you adopted?
Yes, we adopted 1 boy and 3 girls.
Wow, so you have 2 boys and 3 girls now.
That's right.
Wow, you've got your hands full.
We do.
So, one of the things that the Lord has always done is brings people onto this program that have unique stories such as you and your family, and certainly illustrated very well in the book. But I can guarantee, Jeffrey, that there are people that are probably watching this program today that say, you know what? This is what we've been looking to do. We've been looking to adopt, but there are so many hurdles. There's so many this, there's so many that. There's even a family that I know that actually adopted a daughter years ago, and to look at that child today, you would think it's their own. They look just like the family. It's amazing. But anyway, there are so many people out there that probably identify to what you and your wife have been through. What would you want to say to those people that are considering, that maybe say, boy, this is really tough? Give us some advice, give them some words of hope, and encourage them a little bit, Jeffrey.
Excellent. I'd be glad to do that. Here's what I would say. I would say that orphans are very close to the heart of God. He cares so much for the fatherless. There are so many verses that talk about God being a father to the fatherless, and his care for the fatherless. James talks about visiting orphans and widows in their distress. And so when we partner with God to help orphans, we really are touching kind of the core of his heart. And so that's the place to start, from my perspective, is just praying and asking God to give you his heart for the fatherless. In terms of the practical aspects, there are children that need to be adopted, that are adoptable all over the world. There are people in your local city. There are people all over the United States, children. There are children around the world in countries everywhere that are able to be adopted and could be adopted. The process is long. The process is designed to protect children. It's designed to make sure that the children that are being adopted are a good fit with the parents that are going to be the adopted parents. And so that's why the process is so long. It is, financially costly, but there are different ways to handle that. There are many organizations that help provide grants and scholarships for adoption. I know many churches that are have a great heart for adoption and are willing to help families adopt either financially or with care, in some way. And so, we have found it to be a huge, huge blessing in our lives.
Well, Jeffrey, every program that we do on Second Chances, we love to say a prayer for two things. We love to give people the ability to get saved and to get help that they need. But I think in this case, we want to not only do that, but we would like to maybe say a prayer for those that are maybe in that similar spot to where you were a long time ago. And maybe what they're hearing today has been an encouragement to them through hearing you and then picking up the book. So would you give us the privilege and honor to say a little prayer for those people as we kind of wrap up today on Second Chances, Jeffrey?
I would be honored to. Thank you. Father, we come to you right now in the name of Jesus, and we thank you for your love for us. We thank you for your plans for us. We thank you for your partnership with us and your calling in our lives. Father, I pray that if anyone is listening that does not know you, that has not received Jesus in their hearts, that you would draw them by your Holy Spirit right now into relationship with you. And Father, for those families that are considering adoption, I pray that you would impart, that you would multiply the spirit of adoption that comes from your care and your heart for the fatherless to those families right now, that you begin to grow that in their hearts and help them to experience your love for the fatherless and to know that you're calling. Father, I pray that you would call many people to help children that are orphans right now that need to be adopted, to bring them into their home. You would give them the resources that they need. You would give them the courage and the faith that they need to stay connected with you in the process, to listen to your voice, and to be ready to be quick to obey in everything that you tell them. Jesus, we know that your plans are good for everyone. We know that they are for our benefits and for the good of the advancement of your kingdom in the world. And we are so honored and blessed to be in your family. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen.
Our guest today on Second Chances has been Jeffrey S. Moore. The book is entitled We Believed. And Jeffrey, one more time, if someone would like to obtain a copy of the book, learn more about you and what you've been through, where are the best places?
You can go to my website at webelievedbook.com, or you can go to amazon.com and get the book in paperback or Kindle format.
Okay. For Jeffrey S. Moore, my name is Greg Hennis. Thank you so much for watching Second Chances here on the Ascend Television Network.